Is our church actually forming intentional disciples? Are we forming them? Are we really teaching people how to follow Christ? Are we teaching them to observe all the commands and everything that he has taught us? On the surface, one might think so. Thousands of children receive the sacraments of confirmation and First Holy Communion around this diocese and around the country in the past few weeks. Churches were full, after parties are booked, bouncy castles were ordered, but most of us are well aware at this stage that the image is seldom the reality. Very few young families are actually practicing the faith. For many children, their first and often only experience of the faith is what they encounter at school. That experience can differ radically depending on the belief and motivation of the school and of the teachers as well. In April 2025, an INTO survey revealed that just 4% of primary school teachers wanted to teach the sacraments in the school system. This is a very alarming figure, but it's not surprising, and teachers aren't certainly to blame for this. We can't expect them to hand on something which they're not properly trained for, or which in fact they may not believe themselves. And for around 100 years or so now, the call of Jesus to make intentional disciples has largely been left in the hands of the educational system. But over the past century, Ireland has in fact changed dramatically. As we all know, we no longer live in Catholic Ireland. We live in a very secularised society that has moved further and further away from God and from faith. And the system that was once in place is of course no longer fit for purpose. One might even question whether it ever truly was. We only have to look at the fruits of that system to see how deeply flawed it has become. On average, around only 15% of Catholics are now practicing their faith, and this is a figure from our own diocese here. Many no longer believe in the Eucharist. I've probably told you the figure before, that 85% of Mass-going Catholics no longer believe in the true presence. We've lost countless referendums, and the constitutions have been changed in this country because Catholics no longer understand their morality or church teaching, and they voted in favour of legislation that openly contradicts what Christ and his church teaches. Some parents might say that they want to keep their Catholic schools, but very few are actually willing to practice the faith or to pass it on themselves. And this is despite the fact that the church has always taught that parents are the primary educators of their children in the faith. Another recent survey from the Department of Education asked parents whether they wished to retain denominational schools or move towards a more secular model, and only 60% of parents actually responded to that. 40% didn't partake in it at all or didn't bother doing it. This is a significant level of indifference, and of that 60% who did respond, 40% actually said that indeed they did want secular schools. And when you add those numbers together, it reveals a very significant proportion of parents who are either indifferent or opposed to the Catholic faith. And let's be honest, most of them parents probably attended Catholic schools themselves. So the system is flawed, it's failed, as I said, and we as a church have failed these people. We failed the children, we failed parents, we failed the directives, of course, of Jesus. We may be baptizing in numbers, but we are not forming intentional disciples. We're not teaching people to observe all that Christ has taught us. So the question that follows then is, what do we do about this? Well, the first and foremost thing what we need to do as a church is to be very honest. As a church, we need to stop pretending. We need to admit that the system that we have is not working. We need the humility to acknowledge that the system is no longer fit for purpose, and we need the courage to begin again, to come up with some different model, some different idea, some different evangelization. Secondly, and most importantly, each one of us here has to take responsibility for the future of the church, for the future of our children, for the future of formation. Jesus' call to evangelize and to teach the faith was not simply a call to the apostles here on Ascension Day, and it's not the responsibility just of bishops and priests. It's a call to every single one of us. We need to listen to what the Lord has said to us. Here are some words taken from the Church's law, which is canon law. And this says, all the Christian faithful, through baptism and confirmation, are bound by the general obligation and possession to work so that the divine message of salvation may be known and accepted by all persons everywhere. So in other words, as I said, evangelization is not optional. It's not to be left to the hierarchy. It's to be left to each one of us. It's the responsibility of each of us as baptized Catholics. So brothers and sisters, on one day the church buildings may in fact be empty, the schools may be gone, and cultural Catholicism will fade away. But the command of Christ still remains: go make disciples of all nations. The question for us this morning is, are we willing to obey that command? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.